Hi, I'm Matt Flynn, and I'm running for governor of Wisconsin, and I want to tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm running.
Who is Matt Flynn? He was the head of the Wisconsin Democratic Party in the 1980s. He's an amateur author.
I've written political satires set partially in Milwaukee and Washington. The Chinese come in to try to kidnap a math genius, and they get beaten back by the whole city of Milwaukee.
But most importantly, he was chief legal counsel for the archdiocese of Milwaukee at the height of their sexual abuse and cover-up crisis. At one point a frontrunner in the race, it was entirely possible that one of the architects of the archdiocesan strategy to keep abusive priests in ministry could have become Wisconsin's governor. During the campaign, Flynn often downplayed his role, comparing himself to a public defender, portraying himself as this heroic figure who swept in to rid the church of pedophiles and restore its reputation.
But I came in to clean it up. And what happened was we cleaned it up. We've represented the Archdiocese of Milwaukee for more than 50 years. And when these cases came along, our job was to clean it up.
Anyone who was around in this time period could tell you this was a lie. If you weren't around, a Google search will tell you this was a lie. Flynn was known for his legendary cruelty towards survivors and his scorched earth approach towards any person who filed a lawsuit against the church.
In short, he used the legal system as a tool to bully me. The wounds were still very fresh, and he took full advantage of that.
In 1995, he successfully argued a case before the Wisconsin Supreme Court that barred any lawsuit against the church for negligent supervision, making suing the church something that was already extremely difficult to do, nearly impossible.
That decision affected not just my case and the others that were before the court that day, but decades of cases for survivors, and no viable means for them to obtain justice. That is truly Matt Flynn's legacy, the protection of pedophiles at the cost of children.
During Flynn's tenure with the Archdiocese, at least 23 abusive priests were transferred, and those are just the ones that were publicly identified by the church. Flynn worked closely with Archbishop Rembert Weekland and Milwaukee County District Attorney E. Michael McCann to shield the church from accountability and conceal the abuse from the public. We showed up at one of his campaign events with church documents that demonstrated his role in facilitating secret payments to abusive priests to leave the ministry quietly, without notifying the public.
We're going to be putting out a statement shortly, and it will likely be published and it'll be online, and I'll bet you so.
Okay, but I don't understand how you can say that this is not true.
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Because the document is right here. Like, it shows the abuse, it shows the payment, and it shows a letter from you describing the payment.
I guess what I'll say is, when you look at our response, I think if you're satisfied, you can call me.
I don't understand why you can't give me a response right now.
Thank you.
The next day, he did give a response.
Jump in the lake.
See you guys. So the Jump in the Lake Challenge was born.
Drop out!
Once a frontrunner in the race, Flynn finished close to last in a crowded primary. In the process of the campaign, we got nearly every candidate for governor to release a statement in support of the Child Victims Act. His campaign was over, but ours was not. With Matt Flynn out of the governor's race, we turned our attention to the Wisconsin Department of Justice. Then Attorney General Brad Schimmel was making headlines for his administration's backlog of over 4,000 untested rape kits. At a debate, AG Schimmel and then candidate Josh Kaul were asked about a potential investigation into clergy sexual abuse.
I don't indict by headline, and I think with some of those who are talking about what they're investigating, they're indicting people by headline. I don't do that. But I also have great appreciation for the need to not use the power of a prosecutor to destroy people's lives if you don't have the evidence to make that case.
If there are credible allegations that have been brought forward that there is misconduct that needs to be investigated and could potentially be prosecuted in Wisconsin, that is something that the AG's office should take a look at.
A short time later, we met Schimmel outside of an event to hand-deliver a letter from survivors asking for a commitment to investigate the church for abuse and cover-up.
Advocates
Right.
working with them, I hope, will bring those cases to the attention of law enforcement and DAs so they can look at them.
Right, but we're already talking about, how these haven't been looked at. There's all this evidence in there, and I know.
Gotta
But
take
again,
those steps, Peter.
I know, but it's been so many years, and so this
I
is
know
those
that,
those
but
those documents have
8
been
years-
there for
8
several years.
ago, I was looking at some of these
I know you
cases.
were. And so did you see how, as in these files, how the bishops covered it up? So how Weakland and Bishop Scalba, Bishop Scalba, I don't know if you've seen this document, he actually says in there, he writes in there, that returning priests to ministry is an experiment. That is their experiment. I mean, that's shocking. That's stunning. Think about
There
it.
have been a lot of human beings who
I-
have
But
been
Mr.
terminated.
I
Attorney
know, but
General,
a terrible...
when you were asked about this during the debate,
Thank you.
why didn't
Thank
you
you, guys.
give
I'm gonna-
survivors
thank you so
confidence
much.
by letting them know that that was something that you were going to address, and why won't you listen to us? Why is that not something that you're willing to publicly address? Why won't you answer our questions?
Less than a month later, he lost his bid for re-election to Wisconsin's current Attorney General, Josh Kaul. We had hoped that our new Attorney General would take a different approach towards the Catholic Church in Wisconsin.
Let's get to work. Thank you so much.
For more than 30 years, survivors have pleaded for an investigation into the Catholic Church's role in perpetuating the sexual abuse of children in Wisconsin.
We are urging and we need the Wisconsin Attorney General to finally begin to investigate and review the evidence and the criminal activity that has been taking place.
On March 5th of 2020, we met with Attorney General Kaul and District Attorney John Chisholm to discuss the possibility of a statewide investigation. Kaul told us he needed a political reason to investigate the church. Just 4 days later, Nate Lindstrom died by suicide. As a teenager, Nate was sexually assaulted by Norbertine priests at Notre Dame Academy in De Pere, Wisconsin.
As a youth, you think that they would do something at some point, that they would help, but they never did. They were only interested in attacking us.
Because there were no available avenues to justice through the court system, Nate was forced to seek help from the Norbertines, the organization whose priests and administrators groomed him, abused him, and intimidated him into silence. After the church cut off payments for Nate's mental health treatment, he took his life.
It's up to us to carry on Nate's mission. Don't let it happen to your kid, your brother, or the neighbor kid.
His death galvanized alumni of Notre Dame Academy to demand transparency and accountability from the church and intervention from the Wisconsin Department of Justice. When Kaul's office finally agreed to open an investigation, we were cautiously optimistic.
And I'll use this word very deliberately, we want your blessing.
We were clear that the investigation needed to focus on the church as a nonprofit corporation and examine patterns and practices that facilitated sexual abuse.
We can't just prosecute a few individuals and believe that this problem is going to go away.
We brought them our expertise on the history of this issue, everything we had learned through our network of survivors throughout the country, and most importantly, our commitment to justice and truth-telling, a commitment that we wanted to believe the Wisconsin Department of Justice shared. In April of 2021, Kaul made the official announcement that he was opening a statewide investigation into clergy abuse. Standing with him were 5 district attorneys from every county in Wisconsin in which a Catholic diocese is located. Kaul promised to follow the evidence wherever it leads.
I want to stress that we strongly encourage anyone who knows anything to report. No detail is too small.
He asked for any and all information related to clergy abuse or church cover-up. Having dealt with Wisconsin's bishops and their corporate lawyers, we knew they weren't going to hand it over without a fight. A little over a month after the announcement, Wisconsin's Catholic bishops, led by Archbishop Jerome Listecki of Milwaukee, announced that they intended to obstruct Kaul's investigation by refusing to share documents and evidence with the DOJ. In a letter to the Attorney General, they characterized Kaul's investigation as an act of anti-Catholic bigotry. We were under the impression that the DOJ and the 5 district attorneys, including Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm, would push back. We were wrong. To this date, no law enforcement official in Wisconsin has made any apparent effort to enforce compliance with the investigation, even though they acknowledged to us that they were aware that the church was withholding information about priests, nuns, Catholic teachers, and lay people who had abused children. 4 of Wisconsin's 5 Catholic dioceses have published lists of abusive clergy, but the lists are incomplete. The Wisconsin DOJ led us to believe this was a priority in the investigation.
So, to make sure the lists are accurate is the first objective.
And having the public acknowledgement that this is validated, this is something that happened, is something that is really significant to a lot of survivors, and that makes a big difference for them. And that those lists are not accurate, just frankly.
Church lists do not address patterns of racial discrimination in their treatment of victims and the disproportionate number of known abusers transferred into predominantly black parishes and schools.
African Americans come to this issue with a pre-existing condition. That pre-existing condition is the trauma of racism, and then added to that, then you have the trauma of the abuse, and then added to that, you have the trauma of being called a liar.
Priests like Father Michael Newberger specifically targeted communities of color.
At Milwaukee's federal courthouse today, we learned that a lawsuit is being filed on behalf of Raphael Love, a black clergy abuse victim. Advocates say Love was abused by Brother Paul West. It happened decades ago at a school in Mississippi that was operated by a religious order based here in the Milwaukee area. Now, these advocates argue that race and economic status affect how abuse victims are treated.
My name is Joshua Kendrell Love. I was born 1983. I was 10, 11, and 12 when I was molested by a friar at St. Francis of Assisi. I have a thinking chair, and I fell in love with the chair because it makes me feel like I'm still happy because it's a school chair. And I've been hurt by wanting to learn to go to school, and it just make me feel like it's gonna be all right. No matter what I go through, I'm gonna be all right. It's make me strong. Like, I guess there's that child inside me that still want to sit there and learn.
A civil lawsuit has been filed against the Franciscans of the Blessed Virgin Mary this week, alleging a pattern of racial discrimination in the treatment of survivors and placement of offenders. Call says this is not part of the inquiry.
In Milwaukee, in some areas, and other parts of the state, there were certain perpetrators who had talked about specifically targeting children by race for abuse. I think that we're missing a big part of the picture if we don't hear from them. Especially, I think of the Native community in Green Bay and in the Superior area.
But, we work pretty closely with the tribes. And so definitely we would want to reach out.
All the indigenous people and the people of color, that are in the inner cities that had priests and nuns that molest them, listen to these stories that are out there. And we were forced, this religion. They forced it upon us and support us.
People buried in the grave sites. There doesn't seem to be any documentation about how these people died.
And the people who really know about it and are responsible about it and have the records and the archives about it are the Catholic Church, the Diocese of Green Bay, for instance.
Attorney General Josh Kaul is already investigating abuse within several Catholic dioceses in Wisconsin. Yet organizers at today's walk are urging Kaul to expand that investigation to include schools Native American children were forced to attend.
I contacted the Wisconsin DOJ to inform them that I was in possession of an internal church list with the names of hundreds of priests and other faculty members and volunteers who had been accused of sexually assaulting children in the Milwaukee Archdiocese. The person on the phone told me that this sounded extremely important and that she would contact her superiors to figure out what I should do with the list. They never returned my call.
How do you ensure the lists are accurate with no documents or evidence? Because whistleblowers could not get through to the AG, they gave the documents to us. We delivered thousands of pages of documents and evidence to the DOJ. This included secret church lists of priests, coaches, choir directors, teachers, nuns, and volunteers who had been accused of abusing children in the Milwaukee Archdiocese and the Green Bay Diocese. There were hundreds of names on the list that are not included in the list published by the church. These were not all historical cases as the church alleged. Many of the individuals on this list appear to still be in ministry, some in positions working with children. Additionally, we brought the list to Milwaukee County District Attorney John Chisholm and Brown County District Attorney David Lassay.
If you want to all get the secret list, you can grab the evidence of collusion and shredding on top of the car.
Hopefully we can do this inside.
Yeah.
Because it's like 4 degrees below zero. Church whistleblowers around the state have been obtaining this, finding this, getting it to us, getting it to survivors, to get to law enforcement, because they're concerned, hey, what's happening with this?
Nate's mission dropped off documents, including the list, to Brown County District Attorney David Lassay this afternoon. It also included evidence of the diocese shredding documents in 2007.
We dropped off the documents here at the district attorney's office, and while we were giving our press conference, someone pointed out that he was escaping through the elevator behind us. Wearing a gray suit. That's really all I saw.
We had hoped that AG Call or any of the other district attorneys supporting the investigation would act on the whistleblower information. We had asked them time and time again to use the power of their collective offices to subpoena documents and evidence and compel testimony of church officials. Instead, the AG's office turned over a significant portion of the whistleblower documents to the Archdiocese of Milwaukee's Chief Legal Counsel, Frank Lococo, putting whistleblowers at risk. On a call about the whistleblower documents, Assistant AG Elliot Held explained his reluctance to engage with the church on this issue.
You're talking about very aggressive attorneys on the other side. We have a very politically charged Supreme Court in this state, and I'm not touching. That's a third rail. I'm not touching, especially in a case that's this high profile.
This was a devastating development in our efforts, and we believe survivors were owed an honest assessment from us regarding Attorney General Call's performance in the investigation. We held a press conference at the Wisconsin State Capitol to assess Attorney General Call's investigation. We presented a report card to the AG that included grades for several areas of his investigation.
I submitted it to the Wisconsin Department of Justice. I talked to them. I sent multiple emails back and forth. Then around March, I find the email and I said, what is being done? This was promised to be an investigation into clergy abuse, right? I asked them, what is being done? They said, point blank, and I have the email, they said, maybe investigation is too strong of a word. And they said, we don't have the money.
Last year, the DOJ was clear that lack of funding would not impede their investigation.
But right now, it's not like we need to find money or we're not going to be able to do this.
Okay.
We are convinced that we have the funds available to do this the right way.
Yeah, we'll put it this way. Our participation was secured under the understanding that this was an investigation. It involved some effort to retrieve documents and evidence and produce accurate lists, and that has not been the experience of what this has become.
I mean, if you do one thing, but you're going to not do 5 things, and you're going to make me think you're going to do those 5 things, you're leading us to believe you're going to do those 5 things, and that has the effect of a lie, by the way. And I got to tell you, you don't do that to victims of child rape.